I know there are good friends listening here today. So I want to just give you the format that I'm going to follow today, and I'm guessing we have about an hour. The first topic I want to talk about is the coronavirus, the disease and its changes, because it's changing, as we all know. That's the first thing. The second thing is the medical response to this. The third thing is the public health response and whether enough is being done, more of the same or a few different approaches. And the fourth thing, and I think then we'll open up for discussion, is lifestyle approaches to prevent and manage serious disease or infection with this virus, looking at diet and supplements and meditation, breathing, exercise, being in nature, etc. So that's what I want to cover. And I'll start now with talking about the disease itself and its changes. As you all know, the Delta variant, not just Delta, but Delta variant, is now the dominant strain of COVID in the world. And we call it COVID-19 because it stands for coronavirus ID, identified in 2019. But the Delta variant really is COVID-21. And it's different. It's different from COVID-19. In terms of the symptoms, it is not experienced as coughing. There is no loss of taste and smell. And it is experienced as a runny nose, and then it progresses very quickly to very serious disease. So it's different, and that's an issue for all of us because we might think we've got a cold, we don't have the cough, and we haven't lost our sense of smell, and we think, well, thank goodness it's just a cold, but it may not be. So this is a time when we all have to be very vigilant. And if we've got a cold, it's definitely worth being tested quickly. And I'll come to the question of testing in the third area of the conversation around public health. We are basically dealing with a new form of this disease. It is the dominant form in the UK now. And interestingly, it seems that the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is is widely spread in the UK, it's available in Malaysia, it's available in Australia, where I am, that this vaccine appears to be the most effective in preventing the Delta variant that's now the dominant variant. This is all very new. Nobody's got a full picture on anything with this pandemic because we're learning as it goes and as it changes, and the virus and its spread are way ahead of the research. But the latest picture is that it's got a different set of symptoms, it's got different transmission, and the AstraZeneca vaccine so far seems to be more effective than any other vaccines in preventing it. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago which would be the vaccine that I would recommend, and I do recommend vaccines. I've had the first shot of AstraZeneca myself, and have the next one in about a week's time. I would have said Pfizer because of the concern about the clotting, very small incidence of clotting around AstraZeneca, but now I would probably say AstraZeneca because it's the most effective against the Delta variant. But they're all working, but AstraZeneca's ahead, it seems. And then there's the medical treatment, and excuse me, I don't want to go into this too much. I am a public health academic and researcher, but I don't come from a background of clinical medicine. And I think on the medical treatment, we want to have a doctor speaking about that. But I do want to dispel a few myths. One is I've had a number of friends in Malaysia particularly say to me that very exciting about ivermectin and the potential of ivermectin. The US Food and Drug Administration, which is the authority responsible for drug approval in the US, has made it very clear that ivermectin is not to be used in the treatment of COVID. The British Health Authority has said exactly the same thing, and the World Health Organization has also said the same thing. Do not use ivermectin for treating COVID. So somehow the words got out in Malaysia that this is a great drug and it's going to be the answer. Definitely not. Sorry. So there are, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but ivermectin is not our hope. Malaysia has started, I saw Tan Sri, the director, Tan Sri Noor, the Director General of the Ministry of Health, has said a clinical trial will be starting in Malaysia on ivermectin, even though all of these regulatory authorities are saying don't use it. But that's, clinical trials don't come up with quick answers. That's going to be months and months. And Pfizer has announced that in November they will be releasing a new treatment, not a vaccine, a new treatment for COVID, which the clinical trial evidence is showing seems to be effective against in killing, in getting rid of the coronavirus within 5 to 6 days. I'll come back to that. But there is no best treatment at the moment. There are sets of treatments. Remdesivir is being researched. The malarial drug, hydroxychloroquine, has been shown not to be effective and is a bad idea to take it for this. So we're still waiting for the best treatment. At the moment, the conversation is all around vaccination and social control, social measures, SOPs. So I'll get on to that now. This is my third point, the public health perspective. And I like to say that there are, the table of public health in this instance has at least 4 legs to it. And we're only paying attention to 2 legs right now. So we all know, and you're going through it, and my heart is with you all as you go through these difficult times, social measures. So, of course, there were the early recommendations, which are still absolutely front burner important, which is hand washing, social distancing, and masking. And now double masking and face shields are all very useful contributions. That's one leg of the table of public health. The second leg of the table of public health is vaccination. And we know about that. And Ken has a link to the conversation that my colleague and I had with YB Gerry. And he certainly was very on top of all of the specifics. And I asked him a question, why don't you open up sports stadiums? And he said, oh, we're doing conference centers. And within 48 hours, he'd opened Bukit Jalil. So I think, there's room for input and change. But vaccination is the second leg of the four table legs of public health. And as you know, the main vaccines available, excuse me, in Malaysia, the Sinovac from China, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca. And the government, through YB Gerry, announced recently that they have put in an order for Johnson & Johnson's single jab vaccine instead of the double treatments of the others. Now, the Sinovac has only been found to be 51% effective against infection and the development of symptoms. It's been found to be 100% effective in terms of hospitalization for serious illness and death. But in terms of preventing infection, it's only 51% effective. That's acknowledged by the head of the Chinese CDC, Centers for Disease Control. It's also acknowledged by the head of the World Health Organization. So if it's the only thing available, of course you take it. But if you have a choice, Pfizer and AstraZeneca have effectiveness rates around 90%. So you'd want to take those if you get a choice. So that's the second leg, vaccination. There are two other important legs, and there may turn out to be a multi-leg table, but two legs on a table doesn't give you much stability, does it? You imagine a two-legged table. I'm actually talking to you from a two-legged table right now, but it's a piece of glass that has been folded into a beautiful desk table, and each leg is about a third of a meter wide. So you can do a two-legged table like that. But basically a two-legged table is generally unstable. And that's where we're at the moment, not a very effective platform for dealing with this disease. What are the two other legs? Well, I started off in the beginning saying the Delta variant has different symptoms. And we might ignore them because we think, oh, I've just got a cold. And then it can progress very quickly, and we can also be spreading it because it's highly infectious, as you know. It's about 100% more transmissible than the original COVID-19 form of the vaccine. So what should be our response to that? Well, this is again a question I put to YB Gerry, and that is that in America, in the UK, in Germany, other parts of the world, they're making home test kits that are fast-acting available to the public. And it's a very simple test, and it works with a saliva swab. I don't think it's a nasal swab. I think it might be a throat swab. Singapore has developed a breathalyzer test kit as well that they're trialing. And the idea is that the minute you get a sniffle or a headache, you test. Or if you're really on top of it, you test every day just to be sure. The minute you get a positive result, this device is Bluetooth to your phone. So through Bluetooth, it sends a message to your mobile phone, and that message through an app goes to a central public health coordinating hub, and they send a message back to you. You've tested positive. You must now quarantine at home for at least 10 days. Now, once we get a treatment, and that's the next thing I'm going to come to, that will be linked to pharmacy supply. And your positive result will trigger a response in the central public health hub, which will forward a drug authorization, a prescription, to a pharmacy identified by your location to be nearest to you, and a home delivery service, you know, they can use any of the food delivery services, will have that treatment to you within an hour, half a day. That's it. Now, you imagine that. Those are two really important legs. Home testing kit, fast acting, you get a result within 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the kit. And you get a treatment within half a day at most. You're sitting at home, you take this drug. Pfizer tells us that it works fully effectively within 5 to 6 days, this drug they're launching in November. So you're quarantining for 10 days. Within 5 days, your test results show you're negative because this treatment has killed it. That is what we need. Then we're really on top of this situation. You stay at home within hours of testing, of getting infected. You get a treatment that same day. It's all gone within 5 days and you're still at home. That's going to change the game completely. So those are the four table legs of public health. All the SOPs, including quarantine and movement control, but also our personal SOPs of hand washing, masking, social distancing. That's number one. Number two is vaccination. Number three is home test kits, fast acting. And number four is treatment. And we're not there at treatment yet. So, we're not going to be on top of this fully until we have treatment and until treatment is absolutely universally available. And I said to YB Kyrie in this conversation, are you sitting at the table with Pfizer now? Because November's only 5 months away. And if you want that for Malaysia and you want that for all Malaysians, as we've seen with supply with the vaccine, if you're not at the bargaining table and negotiate your place, you'll just stand in line with more than 100 other countries. So it's time to get in there now. He said, yes, they are talking. So we hope that something's happening there. So the next section, and I know the area that you're all very, very interested in, but I needed to get that medical and public health perspective covered before we go into this area of lifestyle measures. What can we do in our lives that will make for a healthy immune response in the case of this fast-changing virus? There's a lot that we can do. And for a start, stress is a factor in weakened immunity. So if we're panicking and we're fearful, and there are so many reasons to cause worry in the face of this pandemic, then our immune system is weakened. And so this is where meditation, TM City program, advanced techniques are all very important. We have a huge amount of evidence, scientific evidence that you all will know about, and that Ken can, I'm sure, send you a link to through the David Lynch Foundation's web page section on research on TM, that shows that TM is a highly effective means of reducing stress. So that's really important. There are also, we always say in teaching TM that it's about rest and activity. So it's important that our activity is positive. And what does that mean during lockdown? What does that mean during a time of personal challenge, perhaps financial challenge? What can we do so that that activity is positive? Well, one of the things that's come out, WHO has said this, the World Health Organization, it's coming everywhere. And as Ken mentioned, I chair the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute, headquartered in the US, but a global initiative. And people are talking about the accompanying pandemic of mental health, because this is such a protracted and worrying time. So we have to be aware of this, that we are all in a situation of mental health challenge. What can we do in addition to our meditation program? One of the things is we should be conscious that we want to focus on things that bring us joy, that bring us happiness. We can't do that necessarily by going traveling or visiting people, but what can we do that brings us joy at home? Music is very important in this. Music that we love, music that is soothing. There's music that is meditative music that you can listen to. There are a whole set of Maharshi Gandharva Veda recordings. Ken can give you links to those, that create a peaceful atmosphere. There's music that might be our favorite music, and taking time to listen to music or having it playing while we're doing household chores or whatever, that's a very good thing to do. There's movement, and you might think, what can I do that's movement? I'm stuck at home. Well, there, of course, is yoga, and many of you have been on residence courses and TM World Peace Assemblies will have learnt the yoga asanas that we do before meditation. Those are good to do regularly, once, twice a day even. Extremely balancing, also stress reducing, also immune strengthening and balancing. Aromas. We know that aromatherapy is supported by scientific evidence, showing relaxation, improvement in mood, reduction in anxiety, and so on. Lavender oil is extremely effective in this. Rose oil as well, some sandalwood oils, and there are a whole range of Maharshi Ayurveda aroma oils that Ken and I think Noel can advise us on, and others, I'm sure. So having some aroma there is good as well. Another thing is orderliness. If we're stuck at home, it's easy to think, oh, I'll do the dishes later, or, you know, the dishwasher's overloaded, but I can't be bothered, etc. Or I need to vacuum the place, and, you know, you may or may not have a housekeeper, but the housekeeper can't come because of isolation, etc., etc., and I'm going to put it off. Well, it's not good. To be positive, we need to be in an orderly, clean environment. Have some flowers, have some from the garden, or order some flowers in, you know, once a week or two, just to create something uplifting in the environment. It's very important. It's a time to, if we're stuck at home, go through clutter, declutter, throw out junk or stuff that probably should be called junk, that we're keeping just in case, or because there's a memory of this or a memory of that. This is the time to declutter and just have harmony in the environment. Another thing in terms of movement is dance. I've published research on the effect of dance on depression and anxiety, and it reduces depression and anxiety. Now, you might think, how can I dance? I'm stuck at home. You can dance. You can put on music and you can dance to the music. Even if it's just you at home, you can dance. Do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You'll feel good afterwards. And one of the things that research has found, comparing dance to other forms of exercise, all exercise, it seems, stimulates activity in the occipital region of the brain, at the back of the brain. Dance is the only form of exercise that stimulates activity also in the prefrontal areas of the brain, which is related to reasoning, creativity, innovation, communication. And of course, we see in TM that there's coordinated brainwave activity in the prefrontal areas of the brain as well. It's alpha coherence. So dance does that. And you might think, how come? How come this kind of exercise activates the sort of higher areas of the brain, and other exercise modalities exercise the sort of motor areas of the brain, which is good. We want that, but, you know, dance gives us more. So the reason seems to be, researchers at McGill University in Canada have argued that through the evolution of humanity, dance has been part of our social experience. You know, very early ancestors danced around a fire as a group, partly to keep warm, but also dance was a way of sending a message to the universe, dancing under the stars. It's like they're communicating with the stars. They're communicating with the ancestors who have gone. Please look after us. Please bless us. dancing different ways at different planetary cycles. We've just had an equinox, different kind of dances for that. And dance before a hunt. We need food to keep us going. We're going on a hunt, praying to the spirits of the animals through dance, even assuming the role of some of the animals in dance. Please share some of your members with us to keep us alive. And thank you for that. So dance has been a means of communication throughout human evolution. And dance has generally been a social thing you do with someone, and they go this way and you go that way, and it's interactive. It is communication. So when you think of it like this, it's not surprising that dance activates the communication areas of the brain and the creative areas, because you get into the rhythm and you're creatively innovating as you go in terms of the expression. So you can dance at home, put on music, nobody's looking, or if somebody's looking, get them to dance with you. You can do that. It'll lift your spirits. That's another form of movement. If you've got an exercise bike or a running machine, you can use those. You can also garden. There's a lot of research showing that gardening is very good for mental health. And that's because we come from nature. It's only in recent generations that our species has lived in cities cut off from nature. But we come from nature. It's programmed into us. So I've just finished research with the Sarawak Biodiversity Centre, and we've written up an article, which we're going to submit for publication in the coming week or two, looking at the chemicals emitted by the trees in the tropical forest of Mulu in Malaysian Borneo in Sarawak. And they're different from, some of those molecules are different to others that have been identified in forest tree emission in other parts of the world. Tropical forests emit different chemicals, but when we analyze the chemicals, we find they look very similar to known chemicals that produce effects in the brain. You think about it, you smell something, the roof of the nose is the base of the brain. So the chemicals from these are associated with elevated mood. So being in nature is very important. So if you can't go out, if you can't go hiking or walking in a park, but I think you might be able to under some circumstances, but if you can't, at least get out in the garden. If you don't have a garden, then order in some plants because they make a difference to our human experience. There's, of course, the whole area of diet and supplements, but before I get into that, excuse me, I just want to talk about breathing. Again, if you've been on a TM residence course or TM World Peace Assembly, you'd have learned the pranayama breathing exercises that we do before meditation on these retreats. And that's because in the Vedic tradition, it's been experienced and known that this lowers the metabolic rate further. And so we start meditation from a much more settled level than if we just jump in straight from being busy. So the asanas, the pranayama, the breathing, and then the meditation. So there has also been a lot of research on pranayama showing reductions in anxiety and depression, improvement in blood pressure, etc. And you can go online and you can search for that. Pranayama benefits. Now, I want to share an experience with you of a friend of mine in Chicago, excuse me, Bija Bennett, who's a longtime TM teacher and who, before she became a TM teacher, was a yoga teacher. And she worked with Maharishi directly in person on developing some of the yoga asanas that we use many decades ago. Bija is now chair of the Yoga Therapy Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute. She's a very dear and old friend of mine. And she got COVID last year. She got sick, she was hospitalized, but she didn't have any lung problems. She had been doing these breathing exercises through yoga, and then work with Maharshi through yoga and pranayama. She'd been teaching at the Maharishi Ayurveda Center in Lancaster, Massachusetts, when Dr. Tony Nader was medical director. And she does these breathing exercises every day, and her lungs were fine. She said she felt terrible. She was on some sort of medication, the best they could find. But she recovered very quickly, and she had no lung complications. And I said, Bija, can I share this story with other people when I talk about this? And she said, yes, please do. So this, of course, is not data from a clinical trial. It's just one person's experience. But I think we're all looking for experience right now to guide us. And that's a pretty good message. Do your pranayama at home. So then there's the whole area of diet and supplements, including Maharishi Ayurveda supplements, which many of you will know about. And you'll have seen there's a lot of marketing around immune boosting products. I want to just say to you, this is a very inadvisable term, immune boosting. The immune system does not need to be boosted. It needs to be balanced. And in fact, one of the dangers of COVID is exaggerated immune response. Some of you will have heard of the clinical issue of cytokine storm. What does that mean? Cytokines are an immune cell, and inflammation occurs with serious COVID cases. It's particularly the case with people who have what they call comorbidities or other serious conditions like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and so on. Diabetes is a major risk. And sadly, we know Malaysia has the highest per capita rate of diabetes in Asia. So it is a real issue. What happens is when that inflammation gets very high, then the immune system overreacts to it and starts overproducing immune cells, in this case cytokines, and you get what you call the cytokine storm, where the immune system is overreacting and it starts attacking the body's organ systems. So we do not want to boost the immune system. Must get that into your thinking. We want to balance the immune system. Ayurveda is all about balance. It's not about boosting. So what can we do? Well, I mentioned inflammation. What can we do to prevent inflammation? And inflammation is the root cause of many, many, many diseases, particularly lifestyle diseases, including diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, cardiovascular disease, and so on. One of the best anti-inflammatory agents is turmeric, kunyit, Malay word kunyit. One of the things we need to know is that turmeric can only be absorbed by the body under one or both of two conditions. The first is that it's cooked and boiled. The active phytochemical in turmeric is called curcumin, as many of you will know, and that is only absorbed by the body when it's been activated through boiling, or when it's accompanied by the chemical piperine, which comes from black pepper. So if you have turmeric, you should either boil it or have it with black pepper. So if you put it in your morning juice, for example, you juice up some kunyit root, then you must also put in a bit of black pepper with that, because the black pepper, the piperine in black pepper, releases an enzyme from the gut wall, which then attaches to the curcumin and absorbs it into the gut. If you don't release that enzyme, it just goes through your gut and out. You don't get benefit from it. So boiling it or having it with black pepper or both is the way to do it, to take curcumin. And it is probably nature's best anti-inflammatory agent. Have to be careful not to have too much of it, or you might go slightly orange. But a small amount every day is fine, or a turmeric and black pepper supplement or a curcumin supplement. Always, if you're doing a supplement, have a look on the label. Does it say with black pepper? If it doesn't, don't buy it, because there are supplements out there that say black pepper on the label. That's a home remedy that's available to everybody. I have turmeric every day. I put it in my juice and have a bit of black pepper. I take a curcumin supplement once a day, because if you control inflammation, you control all manners of infection. The Maharshi Ayurveda supplements, the Maharshi Amrit Kalash nectar, which is the paste, and ambrosia, which are the tablets, have also been found to balance the immune system and are highly recommended at this time. The ambrosia, the tablets, also have been shown to affect brain chemistry. And in research that I was overseeing in the 1990s, through the Lancaster Foundation in the US, it was found that the receptors in the brain, the opioid receptors, which sort of influence the experience of pleasure and pain, they would selectively, when with Amrit Kalash, they would selectively bind to what are called agonist molecules, or positive mood molecules, and they would not bind to antagonist molecules, which we could call stress or negative mood molecules. So the behavior of the receptors was changing with Maharshi Amrit Kalash ambrosia. So that's another thing we can do for mental health. It's very calming, but it's the experience that we have of it being calming is related to actual changes in receptor behavior in the brain. There are a range of other supplements as well. Again, Ken, Noel, Gerry, Eileen, others who are expert in this can advise you on these. In terms of diet, what should we be having? And what should we be avoiding? We shouldn't be having too much sugar. That's a big problem in Malaysia. The national beverage, teh tarik, is loaded with sugar. And that, of course, we know is a diabetes risk, and I'm sure teh tarik is a contributor to Malaysia's high incidence of diabetes. Another thing you should know is that white rice is a diabetes risk. White rice is a diabetes risk. Let me tell you about it. When a rice grain is taken off the rice ear, they call it, the fruit of the rice plant, it's got two layers on it. One is it's got what we call a husk, which is very rough and it protects the grain inside. So we take that off. Then it's got a skin on it, an endosperm it's called, and that's brown, sort of golden brown. Now, rice polishing began only in the 19th century, when there were steel rollers that you could put the rice through and take off that brown skin, and you're left with pretty white rice. It was purely cosmetic, the reason for this. White is nice, brown isn't so nice. So we like white rice, nasi putih. If we look at the anatomy of a grain of rice, that skin on the outside contains a whole lot of nutrients. It contains a vitamin B complex, which is good for the immune system. It contains amino acids, which build muscle and bone and brain tissue, right? Amino acids. And then it's got enzymes which break down the white material in the rice grain. What is the rice, that white material? We know it as starch, don't we? And those of you who've studied chemistry know that the chemical formula for starch is the same as the chemical formula for sugar. Starch equals sugar. So a plate of white rice is, in fairly simple terms, a plate of white sugar. It's something to think about, isn't it? And under that skin, that endosperm, is a layer of protein that also gets polished off when rice is polished. So we lose a B complex, we lose amino acids, which build our brain, our muscles, and our bone, and we lose enzymes which break down the sugars and the starch in the body of the rice, and we lose protein. What are we left with? Sugar, starch. That is also why diabetes is climbing across Asia, because people have got more money, they are eating more rice. Before it would be a handful of rice, now it's a massive plate of rice. And that plate of rice is a plate of white sugar. Research at the Harvard School of Public Health has found that if people just include one serving of whole grain rice in their diet once a week, they reduce their diabetes risk by 16%. That's all. Just one serving of whole grain rice. 16% reduction in diabetes risk. If they do 2 to 4 servings a week, they reduce their risk of diabetes by 32% or more, 32 to 36%. Why wouldn't we do that? You know, people say, oh, I don't like brown rice, I don't like the taste, and so chewy, la. Well, it's because you're not thinking la. You need to soak it. You soak it and you cook it longer, and you get used to a nutty taste. And anyway, all the sauces that we have with it add other flavors to it. This is a very simple way of reducing diabetes risk, having whole grain rice more often. And that can include red rice and black rice and purple rice and all the different rice varieties that are out there. And you can even mix those in with white rice. So you have a sort of colored, variegated rice. And why is this important? In a talk on COVID, why am I talking to you about rice? Because white rice is a diabetes risk, and diabetes is the biggest risk factor for serious cases of COVID and death. That's why rice matters. So I'll leave you to think more about that. Another thing is healthy, fresh greens. The Malay ulam has so many different varieties of herbs, medicinal herbs in it, that it's highly recommended to use some of those. Pagaga, the botanical name is Centella asiatica, is a brain tonic and a skin tonic. Have a few leaves of pagaga every day if you can. It'll enhance memory and cognitive functioning, as well as improve skin tone. You don't need a lot of it, just 5 or 6 leaves a day. Ginger is good for digestion, we know that. If your digestion is healthy, then you will be metabolizing the nutrients that come into your body. So again, some of the teachers who have trained in Maharishi Ayurveda will be better able to advise you on the specifics here. But diet is really important here. Less fried food is also important. Frying breaks down the nutrients and the molecules in the food, and they can oxidize and become free radicals, which cause inflammation and damage to the lining of our gut and arteries and blood vessels. On that, I want to say back to the beginning about the disease. There's an emerging body of research that is showing that we think of COVID as a a respiratory disease affecting our breathing system. It turns out it's a vascular disease. It attacks the lining of the blood vessels. The endothelium is the lining of the blood vessels. So the endothelium is what draws nutrients out of the blood and disperses it throughout the body and the organ system. So it's a vascular disease. If you Google COVID vascular disease, you'll get some of the research coming out on that. Extremely important to understand that. This is why we can't have inflammation, because that causes free radical generation, which also, like rust, causes damage to our blood vessels. So anything that's going to improve vascular functioning is really good. And again, the Maharishi Ayurveda supplements will help with that. Reducing inflammation is really important in that context. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I think I've covered everything that I wanted to share with you. I'd like to go back to Ken. I see we've got 49 people online here, which is great. I'm sure we've got some questions. Now, somebody has said there are doctors all over the world have attested to the efficacy of ivermectin in a live webinar. I'd like to encourage you to put ivermectin, FDA, in your Google box and see what you get up. I've got the links here on my handphone. And there's something from the FDA which is headed, "Why you should not use ivermectin to treat or prevent COVID-19." I will send that to Ken now, and he can share that with you. Let me see if I've got your... No. Ken, I'll forward that to you, and you can share the link with people after this talk. But you're always going to get dissenting views, but if you look at the major regulatory bodies, they absolutely say you should not use ivermectin for preventing or treating COVID. If you'd like to type any questions into the chat box, please feel free, and I'll respond to those. No, we don't seem to have any coming in. Ken, why don't I come back to you? Yeah, there you are.
Thank you, Professor. Teacher Eileen, do you have any thought or questions to share?
Oh, yes. First of all, to Dr. Gerry, apa khabar?
Kabar baik. Terima kasih.
Yeah, we miss having you in our country, but
I miss you. Your country locked me out.
You're safer where you are.
I am. That's true.
Yes. Well, you have given us a very clear and very precious, important information, and especially I like the point about balancing instead of boosting our bodies, because at this time we are all in a panic mode and everybody is wanting to try to boost up their immune system with vitamin C and everything. But I think your balancing idea is excellent. And I also just bought a packet of this pagaga because you told us before that it's a very good thing. But how do you take pagaga as a powder? It's in the powder form.
Well, you have to just blend it in with your juice in the morning, stick it in a blender and have it with your juice. Otherwise, it'll be a pretty dry, powdery mouth that you'll have from it.
Yes, and also the point about reducing the intake of rice, which is also what I mean is people are doing the opposite, to have more sitting at home and eating more rice.
Yeah.
And so is it important that we keep our body more alkaline and instead of acidic?
I don't go for that kind of framework. We know from Ayurveda we've all got different body types. And we should just know what's going to balance our body type.
Okay.
And we have guidelines from Ayurveda how to do. I don't go for this binary alkaline acidic kind of thing, but inflammation is acidic, and I've been talking about that. We definitely want to not have excessive inflammation in our body. Yeah.
So, and also about keeping our moods high, joyful, and inner strength.
Yes,
that is very important, because to be happy, Maharishi said, is so important, because the bliss is the cushioning effect. So we are very grateful that you have shared all these good points with us. If we want to be strong and healthy and balanced in this way, and we are very, very happy, glad, actually very fortunate that we are together, the Siddhas, meditators and teachers, that we have learned how to transcend, and so we can draw from this unified field the most fundamental, the most profound level of our own soul, our being. Because I think now with this TM, we can have our CEO online and not trigger off the amygdala, the fear center.
Okay, Eileen, we've got a few questions coming in here. I found the ivermectin link and I put it in the chat box so everyone can copy that link from the FDA.
It's a very good question about AZAC.
So there are several questions in here. I think that, well, there's a question about what kind of rice is encouraged if we're not going to eat white rice. Let me just say, your ancestors didn't eat white rice. And what our ancestors ate influences what we can digest. There's research in what's called epigenetics, which is the fast adaptive genetic material that resides above the DNA, that shows that there's generational learning, and what our ancestors ate influences what we can metabolize. Your ancestors didn't eat white rice because the technology wasn't there to polish it. They ate brown rice, and we've forgotten that because the British were the ones who started doing this, and in Asia through their colonies, they were polishing rice. They got a higher price for it. It was mechanized and so on. So there are countless other varieties. There's brown rice, there's red rice, there's purple rice, as I mentioned. So have fun, go online, order some of these rices, and order organic, because you don't want all the pesticides and herbicides coming with that. There's an opinion that AstraZeneca may not be suitable for those aged below 30. Certainly in Australia, the Australian government has prohibited the use of AstraZeneca for anyone below 50 because of the risk of blood clotting, which is very, very small, very, very small. There's a higher risk of blood clotting by a large factor from COVID than from AstraZeneca. Governments are certainly weighing in on this. I can't say 30 or 50. Australia's definitely said below 50, no one's to get AstraZeneca, but we're still building consensus based on the data. Sukhdev is asking, any quick point on moringa? Moringa, of course, is a fantastic supplement. It is good for the immune system. It is a nutrient in its own right. It's a food. I just want to share a personal experience, and that is, if I have too much moringa or have it frequently, I find I get very heaty and can have symptoms of pitta aggravation, which are rashes and a cold. It can actually give me that. So I would say if you're going to have moringa, treat it as a drug or use it in cooking, and don't go overboard on moringa. Have it by all means, but be careful with it. how do you combine pepper and turmeric powder, cooked or mixed in water? Well, if you're cooking turmeric, you don't need to do anything else because boiling it makes it bioavailable. If you're having turmeric and not cooking it, so say if you're mixing powder up and you're going to take it, then you would definitely, grind in a little bit of black pepper or shake in a little bit of black pepper. Not a lot, just a little is enough. Yeah, that's it. What else have we got there? Let me just see. Somebody's saying mRNA technology is a new technology, not well tested. That is true. We're winging it. We're learning as we're going. A lot of people are thinking, what are going to be the long-term effects of something that's related to our mRNA, our messenger RNA? We don't know. That was one of the reasons why I sort of was actually more inclined to go for the AstraZeneca, although I was for it and I was against it and then for it, as the data changed. We're learning, we're winging it. But we don't know what the mRNA vaccine is going to do. Of course, the manufacturers say it's not going to do anything harmful. It's all going to be safe. But you don't know until you do long-term studies, what they call pharmacovigilance. We don't know. Sorry, I haven't got an answer on that. What else have we got here? Yeah, can we just eat the leaves of pagaga every day? Sure. When I'm in KL, I do that. I've got it growing on my balcony. And I go and cut, 4 or 5 leaves, and I stick it in the blender, in the juicer with my carrots and beetroot and so on every morning. So you can do that. You can do it. The traditional way of having it as a Malay ulam is you take the stem and you roll it around the leaf, right? And then you chew it with your back teeth, and that squishes out all the juice. And it's actually a traditional extraction method. Because if you try and eat a flat leaf, you're sort of grinding around there like a horse, and you don't get anything out. So this is a very clever Malay technology of wrapping the long stem around the leaf so that it looks like an old-fashioned kind of roll your own cigar or cigarette, and you bite on that with your back teeth and you chew it, squishing out all the juice that way. That's how you do it. 4 or 5. Why is Amrit Kalash recommended to be taken together with warm milk? Well, I don't, because I have lactose intolerance. So I had some before this call, and I just had it with a cup of herbal tea. It doesn't matter. Warmth is good because the digestive system works on warmth. Now, this is an important point for us to remember, that when we eat, the temperature of our gut goes up. It rises, it gets warmer. When the gut has an increased temperature level, specific enzymes are released from the gut wall that absorb nutrients through the gut wall into the blood supply, into the body. If the temperature of the gut does not rise, and in fact, if it lowers, we don't digest our food properly. Why does this information matter? Because it says, if we drink iced water or a cold drink with our meal, or if we have ice cream immediately after a meal, we lower the temperature of the gut. We're fighting our own body. Our body is intelligently designed to warm up, to release enzymes, to take in nutrients. If we put out that, what Ayurveda calls Agni, that digestive fire, by tipping ice water on it, or ice anything, and then having some ice cream, then your gut will scream and you will be left with undigested food. What is undigested food? It is rotting matter in your digestive system. Not very pretty. That rotting matter is what then oxidizes like rust in your car, and it does to your gut what rust does to your car. It oxidizes, it forms branching chain reactions of oxidized molecules that we call free radicals. They cause damage through inflammation. They cause inflammation, they cause damage. So having anything cold with your meal is not a good idea. Have an ice drink an hour before your meal, have it an hour after. Have ice cream as a treat, not as an accompaniment with your meal. So back to the question about warm milk. Warm is extremely important for enhancing the metabolization of anything that goes into our gut. Warm milk, milk is a food, it's a protein. So that's probably another reason. You're having it with a easily absorbed food. I can't do it. I have a lactose intolerance. In Asia, 60% of people have a lactose intolerance, particularly people of East Asian origin. So you have to adjust the advice according to your own body type, again, and your own metabolic history, your genetic history. Ayurveda is quite personalized. It's not generic like that. So we have to be practical in that. Sukhdev is saying tulsi leaves, quick point. Sure, eat tulsi leaves, but the same as with pagaga and moringa, don't go overboard. Now on pagaga, 5 or 6 leaves is great. If you have 10 or 20, you'll start to feel nauseous because pagaga works on the brain. It's a medicine. You'll start to feel nauseous. And some of you will know Dr. Raju. Dr. Raju has told me that pagaga is used as an emetic, as a means of making people vomit in Ayurveda. They give a strong dose of it. They send, historically, the Vaidya would give people pagaga, which in Ayurveda is called brahmi, and send them out into a stream and stand in the middle of a stream, and they would vomit, and all the stuff would be carried away downstream. So pagaga is a drug. Don't be frivolous about it. Don't think, well, if 5 is good, 25's got to be better. It's not. Right. Okay. Ken, I think we've gone about 10 minutes, almost 10 minutes over our time. It's been great having a conversation with everyone. I see we've got 50 people online now. So it's a wonderful turnout, and I know you're recording this and they're going to make it available for everyone. I want to say from my side how happy I am to be connected with you all. I miss you all a lot. I miss Malaysia. My heart is with you all. I'm sorry to see the hard times you're all experiencing. And I hope that this is helpful in just helping everyone stay healthy with balanced immunity and good bala, from where we get the word balance, bala meaning strength in Ayurveda. So thank you all, and Jai Gurudev.